You, as a citizen living somewhere in a community, have a lot of power. You don't have to change a federal election to change the court system in your locality. So the first thing everyone should know if they ever find themselves interacting with police or potentially facing a criminal charge is that every day is Shut the F Up Friday. It is never to anyone's advantage to speak to law enforcement when you might be facing criminal charges. When they say anything you say can and will be used against you, that doesn't mean, and we might use it for you if you're convincing enough. No. It means literally anything you say, if there's any way to use it against you, will be used against you. So it is to everyone's advantage, always, strategically, if you are facing any form of accusation, to shut the F up and talk to a lawyer before you say anything. Now, here's the tricky thing about our system. You have the right to remain silent. You know this if you watch Law & Order. You know the Miranda warnings. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be provided to you, right? Here's the trick. Our system is not a system of like just laws written on paper. It's a system of what's called precedent, meaning judges get to interpret those laws, and it's their interpretations that essentially function as the law. The courts at this point have interpreted our Constitution in such a way that means if someone tells you you have the right to remain silent and you just remain silent, it doesn't actually invoke your right. They will keep questioning you. They will keep badgering you. And most people don't know that police are allowed to lie to you when they are interrogating you and to create very coercive circumstances designed to get people to confess truthfully or falsely. Young people are especially susceptible to this, especially like the younger they are, the higher the rates of false confession. For some children, very young children, false confession rates can be higher than 50%, meaning kids are more likely to say they did something they didn't do than to truthfully confess. That aside, how does a person get police legally to have to stop questioning them? How do they invoke their right to remain silent and get a lawyer? You have to speak. You can't just remain silent. You have to say, I want to remain silent and I want a lawyer. And I feel like every kid in school should be taught this. The same way I was taught to like stop, drop, and roll. Like I feel like everybody should learn, I want to remain silent and I want a lawyer. And then you stop talking and you wait for that lawyer to be brought to you. No matter what else is said to you, no matter what else is done, you stop talking and wait for your lawyer. That's the beginning step. The other thing that people should know if they're facing accusation is that in this country, the process very much is the punishment. As I speak to you about this, I'm sure some of you are like, they must have done something to deserve it, and like maybe they should have to go through something hard. Let me tell you, as someone who has represented thousands of people, the police get it wrong so much more often than you would assume. This is not a Law & Order Dick Wolf world where cases are being carefully investigated by people who have nothing but time and attention to spend on each individual case. Police are also operating at very high volumes and get it wrong a lot, and don't speak to witnesses a lot, and don't check surveillance video a lot. Tons of people every year are accused of things they absolutely did not do, or who did something like a little wrong, but then get accused of something big wrong that they also definitely did not do. So these rules, these protections I'm giving you, they're not like dirty lawyer tricks. They're the way we all invoke the protections that our founders wanted us to have against government overreach and mistake. So when I say that the process is the punishment, that's a huge problem. Our founders wanted us to have a truth-finding system in which a jury of our peers would hear the evidence fairly presented and be able to decide whether they believe someone did something wrong or not. But the way it actually plays out is that if a person is just accused of a crime, they can lose their job. Even if they don't lose their job from the accusation, like having to come back to court again and again, week after week, that'll cost you your job. Month after month, that'll cost you your job. Finding transportation and childcare. And let's remember, 80% of people in this country who get charged with crimes are so poor that they get a public defender, like me. But that means that the people who the system applies to are the people who can least afford to take time off and get childcare and find transportation and come back to court 80 million times. And that's, by the way, if somebody's lucky, like if they're out of custody. A person is held in jail while their case is proceeding, as a lot of people are. 70% of people in jails in this country have not been convicted of the thing they're accused of. They are legally innocent, presumed innocent, awaiting trial, but still held in jail because they can't afford to pay the bail. They can't afford to literally buy their freedom back from the government. So we have to understand that in this country, more than 90% of people accused of crimes plead guilty in the end. Does that mean that the police are right 90% of the time? No. It means that we've built a system that can grind people down into pleading guilty just to make the process stop. At a certain point, if you tell me, look, just say you did it and you can go home tomorrow, there's a lot of things I might say I did, because the process can be very punishing. And I think this is also important in not just if you yourself were to be accused of a crime or a loved one, but also in how we relate to people who have interacted with the system. When you meet somebody, you meet a new coworker or a job applicant or someone in your social circle who has a criminal conviction or who pled guilty to a crime, not assuming that this means, one, that they're the same person they were whenever that happened, or two, that they actually did what they accused of, because so many people in this country have dealt with the punishment of process and made a decision just to cut the process short. So, if you are ever accused of a crime, which I hope you are not, invoke your right to remain silent, ask for a lawyer, say nothing more, and prepare yourself mentally, financially, emotionally, socially, get your people around you for a process that can be very, very lengthy and punishing. And if you're going to get through it, you're going to need all the help you can get. There are a lot of misconceptions about public defenders. The first thing that people might think that governments assume that public defenders are maybe like an unpleasant constitutional obligation that they have. Or maybe they think that like prosecutors are Batman and public defenders are the Joker, and they're like, why would I fund the Joker? So a huge misconception is that public defenders are irrelevant or just like sneaky defense lawyers who are undermining justice. But actually, public defenders are a massively important access point in our health and safety infrastructure. If you invest in public defenders to work on things that actually solve the underlying problems that can pull someone into this court system, they are better equipped than almost any other system actor to take action and to help people stabilize their lives and move away from the criminal court system. They're upstream in the system. They're assigned right after people get arrested. They're the only person in the system who is fully legally protected, confidential with the accused person, so that if a person has a messy situation and they really need help, they can be messy with their public defender. And if the public defender is equipped to provide the right kind of help, it's a great space in which to solve problems instead of perpetuating problems. So public defense is actually a very, very powerful leverage point. I think that's a huge misconception when people assume that it's somehow not important or nefarious. But the other thing is that people assume public defenders are like run down, don't care, dump truck lawyers. Now, I'm not gonna lie. In a whole world, there's 5,900 different public defender systems in America. Tens of thousands of defenders working in this country. Is everybody the best lawyer in the world? Probably not, no. But in general, defenders are amazing. We are overworked, we are underpaid, we have too many cases. Certainly there's a threshold of caseload beyond which you cannot be doing your best work. But these lawyers who are able to handle those challenges and to come into this job because they care, not because they're making money. Trust me, as a lawyer, you can go make money with your license, but if you go into public defense, it's because you want to help people, or you want to hold the government accountable, or you want to protect the Constitution. There are really good reasons people come into public defense, and then once you're there, you are the person who's in the courthouse every day, getting to know every single player, every judge's like moods and likes and dislikes. The public defenders are the people who are best equipped to marry legal expertise with human insight. Who's actually in these rooms and how do I navigate my client safely through them? Some of the best forms of legal brilliance I've ever seen have come from public defenders, even overburdened, overworked, overloaded, underpaid public defenders. I think public defenders are, by and large, really heroic public servants. I think we should venerate them the way we do firefighters, although I don't know if they're like hot enough as a community for a calendar. But in general, I think people should feel excited about how much brilliance there is in the sector of public defense. And they should feel like it's a space where if we invest, we're gonna get 1,000 times what we put in. It's a space that's amazing at change making and full of talent and full of promise for the future. If you want to create a fairer criminal court system in your locality, I have really good news for you. The US Constitution reserves most criminal law to the states. So when we look at who's in prison in America, like 13% of people who are in prison are there because of federal cases, but about 87% of people are there on state and local charges, which means that you as a citizen living somewhere in a community have a lot of power. You don't have to change a federal election to change the court system in your locality. You just need to pay attention to your local prosecutor races, your local sheriff races. Does your community have a community oversight board for policing? Can you go and attend a meeting? Can you go to your county board of supervisors or a city commission and look up the agenda items that are on their meetings coming up and see which of them have to do with policing or surveillance or prosecution, criminalization, and also which of them have to do with initiatives that help people. Here's your guiding principles. If you want there to be less crime in your community, people need basically 3 things to not commit crimes: housing, some form of income, and access to healthcare. And I know as I list those things, those are big things that are really, really hard to get in our community. But I'll give you an example from my own work. Just by enhancing public defenders' ability to work on those things, we were able to make it such that in one location we studied, 60% of people who came into the public defender's office and asked us for help with housing were able to actually get housing. And nearly 70% who asked us for help getting a job were able to actually get a job. So if you get your local government to invest in things that help people and that have multiple other benefits, right? Our communities are definitely way better off when people have housing and income and access to healthcare. You will see greater safety and greater justice. Another really easy thing you can do is court watch. Courtrooms operate really differently when they are packed with concerned community members who want to make sure that people are being treated fairly in the room. So if you want to just literally go to your local courthouse when you have some hours to kill, you can just sit in any courtroom you want, for the most part, not in juvenile court. Sit in the back, listen to what's being said, take some notes. Are some judges more respectful and humanizing and professional than other judges? Do some judges seem to be really listening? Are people getting held in on charges that they shouldn't be held in on? Are you seeing people getting hauled into court for a first arrest trespassing and somehow getting sent to jail or having bail set? Take some notes. Once you take a lot of notes, maybe call your local paper. Say, hey, I've been watching court and here's what I'm noticing and here's what I'm seeing. If there's a participatory defense hub in your community, you can connect with other community members who are interested in doing the work of supporting people who are undergoing criminal court proceedings and engaging as community members in change making for people who are in crisis. Another thing I would say is it's not enough to kind of tick the box in your local elections based on the letter next to someone's name. Criminal court issues don't always follow political ideologies. So you may have someone on the ballot who you share a party affiliation with who totally diverges from you on important issues like diversion from court or cash bail or mandatory minimums. So if you get a chance to go to a town hall or some kind of convening for a prosecutor or sheriff candidate and ask them tough questions in front of people and give them an opportunity to really share their views with the community, you can have a huge impact. And if you're in a jurisdiction where people are running for office and not telling you what they stand for, we see this a lot in judge elections because judges are very much trained to not convey a lot of personal opinions. It's their job to be neutral, right? It's their job to be fair. So it could be hard when they're running for election to have really detailed platforms and proposals. Seek them out or go to your paper and say, hey, we have 3 judges on the ballot right now and nobody knows what any of them stand for. Can you, the local paper, go interview them and figure out what they believe in? Or talk to your local practitioners in court. Ask them what it's like to appear in front of a given judge. I remember I was voting in my local election and I remember there was the name of this judge on the ballot who I'd appeared in front of, shares a party affiliation with me, and if I had been in a low information situation, I probably would have ticked the box and voted for this judge. But I'd been in front of that person, and that person had fundamentally not understood what my client was experiencing in terms of poverty when that judge tried to set $300 bail on my unhoused client. And I'd said, Your Honor, $300 might as well be $1 million for this person who cannot get access to $300 to go home. And the judge said, Counsel, it's just $300. And had I not known that about this judge, I would have voted in support. So don't let the electoral system ask you to vote with low information. Go seek out that information, go to the meetings, use some of your spare time, bring a friend. Can't bring popcorn to court, but you can definitely bring a friend and a good attitude and a notebook. Our media about the criminal court system generally is very mixed. We are emerging from decades of steeping in Dick Wolf shows that intentionally lionize police and prosecution and create all of these illusions about how carefully cases are handled, what happens when a mistake is made, how reliable the people are in the job, and how well structured the incentives are for people doing these jobs. There have not been as many shows about public defenders. There have been a couple. Sometimes public defenders are well represented as like hardworking, creative lawyers. People often forget that prosecution is proactive. They set up the case. They decide what the charges will be. They decide what the evidence will be. They call in the witnesses. They plan the whole thing. Defense is reactive. We got like stuff coming at us. In some states, you don't even really get to find out what's going to get thrown at you before you're walking into that room for trial. So public defense is a kind of lawyering that is very, very nimble and creative. I've seen that captured sometimes on TV, but honestly, the best depiction of public defense in any film or television is not even really public defense. It's the film My Cousin Vinny. Because Joe Pesci's character in My Cousin Vinny is walking into this room because he cares, because he's got a family member on, whose life is on the line here. He doesn't have the informational advantage. He doesn't have the reputational advantage. He's not part of the in-group in the courtroom. He's an outsider who's trying to do the best he can with the scraps of information he's got. And he has to get really creative and ultimately find an expert witness who can blow the case wide open. The least accurate thing in that movie is that public defenders can always have access to expert witnesses. 80% of forensic scientists work for police and prosecutors. So it can be very challenging for defenders to find and get courts to pay for outside expert witnesses. But if you happen to be dating a brilliant car mechanic who can save your case with her insights, probably the prosecutor could have cross-examined her on her personal relationship with defense counsel. But the themes of public defense are there, of investigating the case better than the cops did, of believing the accused person when they say, I didn't do this and you've got to help me prove it. Although the burden of proof is on the prosecution, defense doesn't have to prove anything, it's on them to prove it. Their themes in this film give you the most accurate portrait I've ever seen, actually, of what a real trial is like, including how informal it can be, how human, how based in an individual's resourcefulness and ideas. So yeah, if you want to see great public defense, you should probably watch My Cousin Vinny.